Welcome to Legend Lantern, where mysterious stories glow like lanterns in the dark. Tonight, I will take you on a strange journey to a place where time stands still and secrets hide behind the warm smiles of a seaside village. This is not a distant legend, nor just a fleeting dream. It is the tale of a journalist, a village by the cliffs, and a truth too unsettling for most to believe. So, settle in, open your imagination, and let this voice guide you into The Village Without Old People. Act 1. Arrival. The bus ride had lasted nearly 4 hours, but for Daniel Cole it felt much longer. The road had narrowed the further they went, winding into hills where cell service dropped away and the outside world felt like a fading dream. The driver hummed an old tune and said little, his eyes fixed on the endless ribbon of cracked asphalt. Daniel sat alone, a leather notebook on his lap, his pen tapping against the cover. He had been chasing stories for nearly a decade, but lately every headline felt the same. Politics, scandal, tragedy. His editor had called him burned out, maybe even washed up. That was when he had stumbled upon the rumor. A brief, almost throwaway mention in an online forum. Hallowick, Village of Youth. No old people live there. You should see it before it disappears. Most people dismissed it as nonsense. But Daniel, restless and searching, had taken the bait. A village without old people? That was the sort of story that could either be a quirky travel piece or something far stranger. Either way, it was a break from routine. The bus finally hissed to a stop on a gravel turnabout. End of the line, the driver said without looking back. Daniel stepped off into silence. The air was startlingly clear, carrying the crisp bite of pine and the distant salt of the sea. In front of him stretched a narrow lane bordered by wild hedges. Beyond them, tucked in the folds of the hills, lay the village. Hallowick. The first impression was one of charm. Whitewashed cottages lined the main street, their windows filled with flower boxes bursting in color. The sound of laughter carried from the market square where vendors sold baskets of apples and jars of honey. A boy chased a dog through the cobbled lanes, his mother calling after him with a smile. It looked ordinary, picturesque even. Yet Daniel's journalist instincts stirred uneasily. Something about the stillness between the sounds, the way every building seemed perfectly tended, unsettled him. Villages always carried wrinkles of age, peeling paint, sagging beams, broken fences. But Hallowick seemed as though it had been frozen in a single, immaculate moment. He pulled his camera from his bag and snapped a few shots. No one frowned at him, no one turned away shyly. In fact, the villagers smiled, waved, even posed. Their friendliness was almost too polished. Daniel approached a stall where a woman was selling loaves of bread still warm from the oven. "Good morning," she greeted cheerfully. She looked perhaps 30, her skin smooth, eyes bright. "You must be visiting?" "Yes," Daniel said. "First time here." He hesitated before adding, "It's a beautiful place. Very lively." The woman laughed lightly. "We do our best. Fresh air and good company. That's the secret." Daniel handed her a few bills, taking a loaf wrapped in cloth. He tried casually. "I couldn't help but notice, I haven't seen many older folks around." For the briefest second, her smile stiffened. Then she tilted her head, still cheerful. "Oh, we're a small community. Many of our elders live quietly, out of sight. You won't see them much in the square." She pressed the bread into his hands and quickly turned to another customer. Daniel chewed on her words as he chewed on the crust. Out of sight. What kind of village kept its elders hidden? By late afternoon, he found lodging at the only inn on the square. Its owner, Jonas, was a broad-shouldered man with the build of a blacksmith. He carried Daniel's bag upstairs himself, setting it down by the window. "Travelers are rare," Jonas said, "but you're welcome here." Daniel smiled politely. "Thank you, it's a lovely village. Peaceful." "Peaceful is the right word." Jonas studied him for a moment. "You're a writer, aren't you?" Daniel blinked. "How did you know?" Jonas shrugged. "You have the look. Always watching, always listening. Just remember, Hallowick is a place for living, not for questioning." The words were friendly, but beneath them lay something firmer. A warning, perhaps. That night, Daniel sat at his desk by the window, looking out over the lamplit square. His notebook lay open, the first lines already written. Hallowick, the village without old people. Day 1. The rumor might be true. Not a gray head in sight. The laughter from the tavern drifted through the open shutters. Dozens of voices, young, vibrant, full of life, but not one carried the tremor of age. Daniel tapped his pen, uneasy. Was it possible? An entire village without grandparents, without the wisdom of wrinkled faces and tired hands? What sort of community erased its past so thoroughly? He closed the notebook and whispered to himself, "Tomorrow I'll start digging." Act 2. The Perfect Village. The sun rose over Hallowik with a brilliance Daniel hadn't seen in years. He woke to the sound of church bells, clear, unhurried, carrying across the rooftops like a call to begin the day. Pulling the curtains aside, he saw villagers already moving about the square. Women carried baskets of bread, men mended fishing nets, children skipped rope. Everything unfolded with the easy rhythm of a place untouched by the hurry of the modern world. Jonas, the innkeeper, greeted him downstairs with a steaming cup of tea. "Sleep well?" "Better than expected," Daniel admitted. The bed had been old but firm, and the silence of the countryside had lulled him deeper than any city night. "Hallowik has that effect," Jonas said with a grin. "Breakfast's on the house. Consider it a welcome gift." Daniel thanked him, making mental notes. Hospitality, warmth, generosity. The village almost seemed designed to disarm outsiders. After breakfast, Daniel set out with his notebook and camera. He wandered past tidy gardens, where roses bloomed without a trace of blight. Farmers waved as they loaded carts of vegetables, their faces ruddy with health. Fishermen returned from the shore with nets heavy and full, laughing as though the sea never denied them. Everywhere he looked, there was vigor, ease, vitality. And yet, no gray hair, no bent backs, no weary faces. At the market, Daniel found Clara, the schoolteacher Jonas had mentioned. She was arranging books on a table for children to borrow. "Good morning," Daniel said, introducing himself. Clara smiled warmly. She looked to be in her late 20s, her hair neatly braided, her hands quick and sure. "You're the visitor, aren't you?" "Jonas told me. How are you finding our little village?" "Charming," Daniel replied. "Almost perfect." She laughed. "Almost," Daniel shrugged. "I suppose I haven't seen enough to judge." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "But I couldn't help noticing. There don't seem to be many elders about. Where do they gather?" Clara's smile wavered, just a fraction. She closed a book slowly before answering. "They prefer quiet, privacy. Our community believes in allowing the older generation peace in their later years." "But no community celebrations? No grandparents at the school? No elderly faces in the square?" Her eyes flickered, then softened into kindness. "You ask a lot of questions, Mr. Cole." "I'm a journalist," Daniel said frankly. "It's in my nature." Clara studied him, then handed him a book from the table. "Tales of Hallowik. Perhaps our stories will answer what I cannot." The day wore on, and Daniel continued his walk. He saw children in the schoolyard laughing and chasing one another, but when he asked a boy about his grandparents, the child only blinked. Parents. The boy echoed, puzzled, before running off to join his friends. The word had meant nothing to him. Daniel felt a chill. He scribbled furiously in his notebook. No child recognizes the word. No one speaks of lineage. Photographs in houses, parents and children only, nothing older. It's as if history ends after one generation. That evening, Clara invited Daniel to watch the children perform a play at the schoolhouse. The small hall filled with villagers, all between their 20s and 50s, applauding with genuine pride as the children sang and acted. The play was a simple tale of planting crops, celebrating harvest, giving thanks to the land. Yet as Daniel listened, he noticed something odd. There was no mention of ancestors, no reference to forebears guiding the village. The story celebrated the present alone. Afterward, Clara approached him. "What did you think?" "The children are talented," Daniel said. Then, cautiously, "But the play, it had no past. No grandparents teaching the children, no wise elders blessing the harvest." Clara's expression grew guarded. "Why should children be burdened with thoughts of age and death? Here we teach them to live, to embrace joy. The past is a weight. Hallowik is light." Daniel stared at her, unsettled. "But without the past, how do they know who they are?" Clara's eyes glimmered in the lamplight. "Perhaps identity is lighter when it isn't tied to graves." Back at the inn, Daniel sat by the fire, his mind racing. Jonas brought him a drink, slapping him on the shoulder. "You're frowning, friend. Did our festival bore you?" "Not at all," Daniel said carefully. "Just curious. Don't you miss the wisdom of your elders? Their guidance?" Jonas's laugh was hearty, but his eyes betrayed something sharper. We have no need for frailty here. Hallowik thrives on strength. We honor our elders in ways you wouldn't understand. Daniel pressed. Then perhaps you can help me understand. Jonas leaned close, voice dropping. Leave it be. Enjoy the bread, the sea, the laughter. Some questions only lead to walls. He clapped Daniel on the back and strode away, leaving him with a drink that suddenly tasted bitter. That night, Daniel returned to his room, opening the book Clara had given him, Tales of Hallowik. The stories were simple fables of the sea and the land, yet every tale ended the same way, with a character stepping away at the height of life, leaving behind a community that thrived in eternal spring. No one grew old. No one lingered. Daniel wrote one final line in his notebook before bed. This village is a garden with no autumn. But gardens without autumn have no seeds for spring. Sleep came uneasily. Somewhere in the darkness, Daniel thought he heard a door creak, footsteps in the lane below. He leaned out the window, but the square was empty. And yet, he could not shake the feeling that Hallowik's perfection carried a shadow, one that grew longer the more he looked. Act 3. The Cracks in Perfection. Morning in Hallowik arrived with the same serene beauty as before, yet Daniel woke with unease instead of peace. The inn was quiet, too quiet. He dressed quickly and stepped into the street. The air smelled faintly of salt and fresh bread, but something in the silence pressed against his chest. The square, usually buzzing with activity, seemed subdued. People still went about their routines, but their smiles looked thinner, rehearsed. A woman sweeping her doorstep glanced at him, then quickly turned away. Daniel felt the prickle of eyes on him. He wasn't imagining it. Villagers paused their conversations when he walked by, their laughter cutting off abruptly, as if they feared saying too much in his presence. He scribbled in his notebook. Yesterday, warmth, openness. Today, caution, distance. Why? He wandered toward the edge of the village, where the houses gave way to rolling fields. There, he noticed something strange. A cart stood abandoned near a fence, a basket of fruit spilled across the grass. Daniel bent down, picking up an apple. It was fresh, polished by dew, yet no one was around to claim it. Then he saw it, tracks in the dirt. 2 sets of footprints, one large, one smaller, leading away from the cart and into the woods. The smaller set ended abruptly, as if the person had vanished mid-step. Daniel crouched, heart racing. He traced the prints with his hand. The earth was pressed deeply, unmistakably real. And then, nothing. Just smooth, untouched soil. He snapped a photo quickly before the morning sun could wash out the details. Back in the village, Daniel tried to ask about it. He stopped a farmer mending a gate. Excuse me, there was an abandoned cart near the fields. Do you know who it belongs to? The farmer's face froze, his hands stilled on the wood. No cart, he said flatly. I saw it with my own eyes. No cart? The farmer repeated, louder this time, almost shouting. Then, without another word, he walked away, leaving the gate half-fixed. Daniel felt his pulse quicken. They're hiding something. All of them. That afternoon, Clara found him by the docks. Her smile was polite but strained. You're unsettled, she observed. Daniel laughed bitterly. Sharp eye. Tell me, Clara, why do the villagers avoid talking about the old? Why do footprints vanish in the soil? Why do people pretend not to see what's in front of them? Her face tightened, and for the first time she looked less like a friendly teacher and more like a wary guardian. Daniel, you're digging where you shouldn't. Hallowik isn't for questioning. It's for living. Living? Daniel pressed. Or pretending. She said nothing, but the silence itself was an answer. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Restlessness gnawed at him. He decided to walk the village under the moonlight. The square was empty, the houses dark. Only the sea whispered against the shore. Then voices, faint, muffled, carried on the wind. He followed them down a narrow lane, past the bakery, past the schoolhouse, until he reached a door half hidden behind ivy. A pale glow seeped from its cracks. Daniel pressed his ear against the wood. Time has come, a voice whispered. The balance must be kept. Another voice, lower, answered, She is healthy, strong. She'll walk with light. Daniel's breath caught. A third voice murmured a prayer-like chant, words he couldn't fully catch, but the rhythm was solemn, ritualistic. He fumbled for his notebook, but the floor creaked under his boot. Silence. The voices cut off instantly. Daniel froze, heart hammering. Then the door creaked open just a fraction, and a sliver of light pierced the alley. He ran before anyone could step out, slipping back into the shadows of the square. The next morning, the cart in the field was gone, the tracks erased, as if they had never existed. Daniel confronted Jonas, slamming his notebook on the inn's counter. "I saw it. Footprints. A cart. People disappearing. I heard voices in the night. What is going on in this village?" Jonas's expression hardened. His jovial mask was gone. "Mr. Cole," he said slowly, "I warned you. Halloween is not for outsiders to dissect. Enjoy your stay or leave, but stop prying." Daniel leaned closer, his voice low and sharp. "And if I don't," Jonas's eyes narrowed, "then Halloween will decide what to do with you." Shaken but determined, Daniel turned to the villagers themselves. He asked questions at the market, pressed children for answers, studied the faces of men at the docks. Each time he met denial, silence, or hurried footsteps retreating from him. But then, an old woman appeared. She was the first Daniel had seen. Gray-haired, wrinkled, her back stooped but her eyes sharp as glass. She shuffled past him on the edge of the square, leaning on a cane. Daniel's heart leapt. "Excuse me," he called, rushing toward her. But before he could reach her, two younger villagers stepped in, gently but firmly guiding the woman away. Their smiles were wide, too wide as they told him, "There are no old people here, sir." And then the woman was gone, swallowed into the crowd as if she had never been there. That night, Daniel sat by his window, staring at the village under moonlight. He no longer believed Halloween was simply quaint or private. There was a secret here. A secret bound tightly enough that everyone, Clara, Jonas, even the children, were complicit in keeping it. Daniel whispered to himself, almost as a vow, "I'll find the truth, whatever it costs." And outside, as if in answer, the church bell tolled once, though no one had pulled its rope. Act 4. The vanishing Daniel could not shake the image of the old woman's eyes. They had been sharp, defiant, alive with the kind of wisdom the rest of the village pretended did not exist. She was proof. Proof that Halloween did not merely lack the elderly, but hid them. And now Daniel needed to see what happened to them. The following evening, Clara appeared at his door. She carried a lantern, its glow soft against the inn's wooden walls. "You shouldn't walk alone at night," she said, almost scolding. "It unsettles the villagers." Daniel crossed his arms. "Is that why they whisper behind locked doors? Why they chant prayers in the dark?" Her face paled, though she masked it quickly. "You heard nothing." "I heard enough," he pressed. "And I saw her. An old woman. Don't tell me she doesn't exist." Clara stared at him a long moment, her knuckles tightening around the lantern's handle. Finally, she said, "If you truly wish to see, then follow me. But you won't like what you find." They walked in silence, through narrow alleys and past shuttered windows, until the path sloped toward the sea. The moon shimmered on black waves, and in the distance a faint hum drifted on the wind. Voices. Clara extinguished her lantern. "Quiet now," she whispered. They crept closer, crouching behind a ridge of rocks. Below on the shore, dozens of villagers gathered in a circle. Each held a candle, their flames swaying like stars against the night. At the center stood Jonas, solemn for the first time since Daniel had met him. Beside him, her, the old woman. Her gray hair streamed loose in the wind, her cane discarded at her feet. She did not resist, though her eyes were fierce as ever. Jonas raised his hands. "Tonight, Halloween renews its vow. We walk only in spring, we keep the garden free of winter. Let her step into the light." The crowd murmured as one, "Into the light." Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. He gripped Clara's arm. "What are they doing?" he hissed. Clara's gaze never left the circle. "What must be done?" The old woman lifted her chin. Her voice, though frail, carried strong against the waves. "I go because you fear time, but you cannot flee it forever. Remember me." Jonas touched her forehead gently, almost tenderly, and whispered words Daniel couldn't catch. Then, it happened. The flames of the villagers' candles flared, sudden and bright. The old woman's body seemed to shimmer, edges dissolving like mist in sunlight. Her figure wavered, half solid, half air, until with a soft sigh she was gone. Gone. No collapse, no fall, no body. Just absence, as if she had been erased from existence. The villagers lowered their candles in unison. The sea roared, and for a moment Daniel felt the earth itself recoil. He staggered back, choking on disbelief. "That's not possible. People don't just vanish." Clara turned to him, her eyes glistening in the moonlight. In Hallowik, they do. The ritual ended as calmly as it had begun. The villagers drifted back toward the square, murmuring quiet blessings, their faces serene, as if nothing unnatural had just occurred. Daniel remained frozen on the rocks, his notebook slipping from his hand. His mind screamed with questions, but one truth rang above all. This village does not let its people grow old. It erases them. Back at the inn, Daniel paced furiously, his voice low but urgent. How long has this been happening? How many have you sent into this light? Clara sat by the window, her face shadowed. Since the beginning. Hallowik was built on the promise of eternal youth. No sickness, no frailty. When age comes, we return our people to the light, and the village remains whole. That's not life, Daniel snapped. That's fear wearing a mask of peace. You're sacrificing your own, erasing your history. For what? An illusion? Clara's eyes hardened. You think we are cruel. But look at your world, Daniel. Look at cities where the elderly rot in forgotten homes, where sickness strips dignity, where death drags people through years of suffering. We chose differently. We chose mercy. Mercy? His laugh was hollow. You don't give them a choice. That woman tonight, she didn't want to go. Clara's voice dropped, almost a whisper. Some accept it, some resist, but all must walk into the light. Otherwise, the balance breaks. Daniel's notebook now brimmed with frantic scribbles. Ritual by the sea. Old vanish into light. Entire village complicit. Belief in balance. What happens if someone refuses? The next day, he tested the villagers. Casually, he mentioned the old woman at the market. Faces stiffened, conversations ended. He became a shadow everyone avoided. Children who had once waved now turned their backs. Fishermen who had laughed now muttered under their breath. Jonas no longer offered drinks or jokes, only silence and watchful eyes. Daniel knew. He had seen too much. That night, as he sat in his room, a knock came at his door. Slow, heavy. He opened it to find Jonas. The innkeeper's jovial mask was gone completely. His voice was steady, cold. Mr. Cole, Hallowik is not kind to those who look too closely. The village gave you warmth, bread, shelter. You repay it with suspicion. Daniel met his gaze. I repay it with truth. Jonas's jaw tightened. Truth? He leaned closer. Truth is whatever keeps Hallowik alive. And if you threaten that, then you won't leave here. He turned, leaving Daniel in the silence of the corridor. Daniel locked the door, his hands trembling. He realized the full weight of his situation. The village would not let him go, not with what he knew. Act 5. The Rebellion. Daniel did not sleep that night. He sat at the desk in his small room, notebook open, candle burning low. His pen scratched across the page, capturing every detail before memory could betray him. Ritual at the shore. Disappearance in light. Entire village complicit. Clara conflicted. Jonas hostile. Danger growing. They will not let me leave. Every word tightened his resolve. If Hallowik thrived by erasing its elders, then someone had to resist. And if no one inside the village dared, perhaps he, an outsider, was the only one who could. The next morning, Daniel slipped quietly into the square. Villagers moved about their routines with smiles too smooth, gestures too rehearsed. But beneath the calm, he sensed tension. Conversations that ceased when he passed, sideways glances, whispers that evaporated like mist. He scanned the faces, searching for cracks in the facade. Who here doubted? Who still carried fear? And then he saw her, Clara, standing at the edge of the schoolyard, her smile fading as she watched the children play. Her hands trembled slightly when she gathered the books, as though the weight of each page was heavier than paper. Daniel approached cautiously. Clara, he said softly. She didn't turn, but her voice was low. You shouldn't speak to me in public. People are watching. Let them, Daniel muttered. You brought me to the ritual. You let me see. That means something. Finally, she faced him. Her eyes, usually so steady, flickered with conflict. I thought you would understand, that you'd see the mercy in it. I saw fear, Daniel said. I saw a woman taken against her will. If that's mercy, then it's painted over cruelty. Her breath caught, and for a moment, the mask slipped. I was only a child when my mother walked into the light. They told me it was peace. But I remember her tears. I remember her begging to stay. Daniel leaned closer. Then help me. Help me stop this. Clara glanced toward the square, where Jonas stood speaking with other villagers. His eyes swept the crowd like a shepherd counting sheep. She shivered. "Meet me tonight," she whispered. "Behind the schoolhouse. After dark." That evening, Daniel waited in the shadows. The schoolhouse loomed against the starlit sky, its windows dark, its bell silent. He clutched his notebook like a talisman. Clara arrived cloaked, her lantern dimmed. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "If they knew." "Then we don't let them know," Daniel urged. "Tell me everything. How does it work? Why do they vanish?" Clara hesitated, then spoke quickly, as if afraid the night itself might overhear. "The ritual is older than memory. They say the founders of Halowick made a pact, that age would never cripple us, that no child would watch their parents wither. In return, when time touched someone, they would be given back to the light." "Given back to what?" Daniel pressed. "No one knows," Clara admitted. "Some believe it's heaven, others the sea, but I think," her voice faltered, "I think it's nothing, just disappearance." Daniel's stomach clenched. "And the villagers accept this? They don't question it. Questioning means exile, or worse. Jonas makes sure of that." Daniel scribbled furiously. "Then we need proof, something undeniable. If I can show the world what's happening here." Clara grabbed his hand, stopping his pen. "No, if you try, they'll silence you. You don't understand, Daniel. Halowick protects itself." He met her gaze, firm. "Then we protect the ones they're trying to erase. Someone has to break the cycle. Someone has to say no." Her hand trembled in his. Slowly, she nodded. "There is one. Tomorrow, another will be chosen. A man named Elias. He's strong, kind. He doesn't want to go. If we can reach him first..." Her voice broke off, but Daniel understood. They would try to save him. The next day was restless, heavy with anticipation. Daniel noticed the difference in the villagers' movements, the way they avoided Elias, the way whispers clung to him like shadows. Elias was tall, broad-shouldered, his face weathered by sea air but still vigorous. He carried nets on his back, yet his steps dragged as though an invisible weight pulled him down. Daniel approached him by the docks. "Elias?" The man's eyes darted nervously. "You're the outsider." "I saw what happened at the shore," Daniel said quickly. "I saw her vanish. Clara told me you've been chosen next." Elias's jaw tightened. His hands gripped the net so hard his knuckles whitened. "Keep your voice down. If Jonas hears..." "You don't want to go," Daniel pressed. "No one wants to go," Elias whispered fiercely. "But they tell us it's an honor. That to resist is selfish. I have children. If I fight, they'll suffer." Daniel's voice dropped. "What if I told you we could stop it?" Elias stared at him, disbelief warring with desperate hope. Finally, he muttered, "Tonight, at the cliffs. That's when they'll come. If you truly mean it, be there." That night, Daniel and Clara hid among the rocks overlooking the ritual site. The villagers gathered, candles in hand, their faces lit with serene devotion. Jonas stood at the center once more, his booming voice carrying across the waves. "Tonight, Halowick renews its vow. Elias walks into the light." The villagers murmured in unison, "Into the light." Elias stood in the circle, trembling, eyes darting toward the shadows, as if searching for Daniel. Clara gripped Daniel's arm. "Now," she whispered. Heart pounding, Daniel leapt from the rocks, his voice cutting through the chant. "Stop! This is madness!" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Villagers turned, their candle flames wavering. Jonas's eyes burned with fury. "You dare interrupt the sacred rite?" Jonas roared. Daniel positioned himself between Elias and the crowd. "You call this sacred? It's murder dressed as mercy. Elias is alive, strong. He deserves to live, not vanish into your superstition." Elias's voice cracked, desperate. "I don't want to go. Please, I want to stay." The villagers wavered, their chant faltering. For the first time, uncertainty rippled through the perfect harmony. Jonas raised his hands, trying to steady them. "Do not listen. He is an outsider. He does not understand our pact." Daniel turned to the villagers, shouting, "And what happens when it's your turn? Will you walk willingly? Or will you beg like Elias, like the woman before him? This isn't peace. It's fear. Fear of age. Fear of time. You've traded your humanity for an illusion of youth." Murmurs spread, doubt crackling like fire through dry grass. Some villagers lowered their candles. Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "He's right. I watched my mother vanish. She didn't want it. None of them do. We have been lying to ourselves." Jonas's face twisted with rage. He lunged toward Daniel, grabbing him by the collar. "Enough! You will not break what Halowick has kept for generations." Elias, with a surge of strength, tore free from the circle and pulled Daniel away. "Run!" he shouted. And together, with Clara at their side, they fled into the night, pursued by the furious shouts of the villagers and the tolling of the church bell that rang, wild and unbidden, across the dark sea. Act 6. The Escape. The night swallowed their footsteps as Daniel, Clara, Elias ran from the cliffs. Behind them, the church bell clanged wildly, each strike a call to arms. Shouts rose in the square, angry, unified, relentless. Hallowik had awakened. Where? Daniel gasped, his lungs burned, his legs heavy. My boat, Elias panted. By the western shore. If we reach it, we can escape by sea. They darted through the alleys, windows burst open, faces glaring, torches flaring to life. Villagers spilled into the streets, their calm masks replaced with fury. There! Stop them! Daniel's heart pounded. He grabbed Clara's hand, pulling her through a narrow passage. Elias followed close, his massive frame barreling through crates and barrels the villagers had dragged into their path. The three burst into the marketplace, only to find it filled. Dozens of villagers stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking the way, candles replaced with sharpened tools and ropes. At the front stood Jonas, his eyes cold as the sea. You cannot run from Hallowik. No one leaves, not with what you've seen, Elias growled. Then you'll have to drag us back. The villagers surged forward. Daniel's mind screamed, we'll never push through. He scanned frantically until his eyes caught the bell tower looming above. A narrow stairway led to its base. This way, he shouted. They scrambled up the steps, villagers grabbing at their heels. Elias kicked down a barrel, sending two pursuers sprawling. Clara clung to Daniel's arm, breath ragged. At the top, the view spread wide, sea glinting silver under moonlight, waves battering the cliffs, the western shore faintly visible. Their escape. But the villagers swarmed below, blocking the stairs, their chants rising once more. Into the light. Into the light. Daniel's stomach twisted. They weren't chasing out of anger. They were herding, like shepherds guiding sheep. For them, this was ritual, sacred. Jump! Elias roared, pointing to the lower rooftops beyond the tower. Without hesitation, he leapt, crashing onto a thatched roof that groaned but held. Clara cried out, terrified, but Daniel pulled her with him. They landed hard, rolling across the straw, tumbling onto the cobbled street below. Pain seared Daniel's shoulder, but there was no time. Villagers closed in, their torches a wall of fire. This way, Elias bellowed, charging into a side lane that twisted downhill toward the shore. The sea smell grew stronger, the roar of waves louder. Hope flared in Daniel's chest, until they rounded a corner and froze. More villagers waited at the docks. Jonas stood at the center, lantern raised like a beacon. Behind him, Elias's fishing boat bobbed in the water, ropes tied fast, guards holding it steady. It's over, Jonas called. His voice echoed across the black water. Hallowik does not allow rebellion. You know this, Elias. You know the pact. Elias's fists clenched. His voice thundered back. The pact is a lie. My children deserve a father who grows old. My wife deserves a husband who lives, not vanishes. Jonas's expression hardened. Your children deserve a Hallowik that thrives. And that cannot exist if age rots it from within. You are already chosen. Step into the light, or we will force you. The crowd roared approval, surging closer. Daniel grabbed Clara, pulling her behind a stack of barrels. His mind raced. Too many. No way through. Unless he spotted a rope dangling from the mast of Elias's boat. If they could cut the moorings and push it free. Clara, he whispered urgently, can you swim? Yes, she breathed, eyes wide. Then when I say go, run for the water. No matter what happens, don't stop. She swallowed hard, nodded. Daniel turned to Elias. We'll make a break for it. You distract them. I'll free the boat. Elias's eyes blazed. Gladly. With a roar, Elias charged into the crowd, swinging a heavy oar he'd seized from the dock. Villagers scattered, shouts rising in chaos. Jonas bellowed orders, but the line faltered under Elias's fury. Daniel sprinted to the boat, slashing at the ropes with a rusted knife he found wedged between planks. One rope snapped, then another. The boat rocked, tugged by the tide. Now, he shouted. Clara dashed from the shadows, leaping into the surf, splashing toward the boat. Daniel scrambled aboard, grabbing her arm and pulling her up. Elias fought his way through, blood streaking his face, villagers clawing at him. With a final shove, he hurled himself into the water, hands gripping the boat's side as Daniel hauled him aboard. Push off! Elias roared. Daniel kicked at the dock, shoving the boat free. Waves caught it, dragging it into the open sea. Torches flared on the shore, villagers screaming, ropes whipping through the air but falling short. Jonas stood at the end of the dock, lantern raised, his face a mask of fury. His voice carried over the crashing waves. "You cannot escape the light. Hallowik remembers. It will take you back." The sea churned, waves hammering against the boat as if the village itself had stirred the waters. Daniel gripped the tiller, teeth clenched. "We just need distance. Once we reach the headland." But then Clara gasped, pointing back. On the shore, villagers lined the cliffs, candles raised high. Their voices merged into a single chant, rolling across the water like thunder. Into the light. Into the light. And as they chanted, the air shimmered. A pale glow rose from the cliffs, spreading across the sea, rippling like a veil of silver light. It reached for the boat, stretching fingers of radiance toward them. The water beneath their hull glowed. Elias cursed, rowing furiously. Clara clung to Daniel, terror in her eyes. "They're calling it," she whispered. "The light. It's following us." Daniel's heart pounded. He refused to believe it. "It's just their superstition. But the glow grew brighter, pressing against the boat, threatening to engulf them. Elias's oar sliced through it, sending ripples of silver scattering, but more closed in. Daniel's mind raced. If the light takes them, they vanish. Just like the woman. Just like all the others. He grabbed his notebook, ripping a page free. With shaking hands, he scrawled a single line. "Hallowik erases its elders. Beware the light." He stuffed it into a glass bottle, sealed it tight, and hurled it into the waves. "If we don't make it," he muttered, "someone has to know." Clara's voice rose in defiance. "We will make it." Elias roared, muscles straining as he rode against the glowing tide. "Hold on." The boat lurched forward, breaking through the shimmering curtain of light. For a heartbeat, the world was nothing but silver and silence. Then, darkness. Ocean. Stars above. The glow receded behind them, trapped at the cliffs, the villagers' chant fading with distance. They were free. For now. Exhausted, the three collapsed into the rocking boat. The sea stretched endless and black around them. Daniel's chest heaved, but a fierce smile spread across his face. "We did it. We broke through." Clara stared back at the shrinking shore, her expression unreadable. But Hallowik still stands, and it will not forget. Elias tightened his grip on the oar. "Then we carry the truth. To the world. To anyone who will listen. No more vanishing in silence." Daniel opened his soaked notebook, ink smudged but legible. His hand shook as he wrote the final line of the night. "The village without old people exists, and it fears time more than death." The boat drifted into the horizon, the first glimmer of dawn breaking across the waves, and far behind them on the cliffs of Hallowik, the lanterns burned on, waiting. Act 7. The Return. 10 years had passed. Daniel Cole never spoke publicly about Hallowik. The night at sea remained etched in his memory. Clara's trembling hand in his, Elias's furious defiance, the glowing curtain of light pressing against their boat. When they finally reached the mainland, exhausted and half-starved, they told their story. But no one listened. The officials dismissed it as hysteria brought on by exposure. The fishermen who found them shook their heads politely, but with doubt in their eyes. A village with no old people? A community that erased its elders in some ritual of light? It was too strange to be believed. Clara returned to her studies, eventually moving overseas. She wrote letters for a time, each one careful, cautious, avoiding any mention of Hallowik. Then, gradually, the letters stopped. Elias disappeared entirely. Some said he had gone back to the sea. Daniel feared the truth, that he had gone back to Hallowik, perhaps drawn by the same binding threads he had once tried to cut. Daniel alone carried the weight. He wrote articles, careful ones, cloaking truth in allegory, pieces about memory, about time, about the way society discards its elders. Readers praised his work for being haunting, poetic. But none saw that he was writing about a real place. None guessed that his metaphors were lived. And yet he could never let it go. The bottle he had thrown into the sea had never been found. He knew this because he checked obsessively year after year. No one had reported discovering a warning in glass. No one had brought word of Hallowik. It was as though the village existed in a pocket of silence, shielded from time, forgotten by the world. Until the letter arrived. It came on a rainy Tuesday in handwriting he almost didn't recognize, shaky, uneven, as if written by someone in pain. Daniel, it's Clara. I don't have long. They found me. Hallowik isn't finished. They never are. I'm sorry. If you want answers, if you want to know the truth of why, come back. But hurry, time runs differently here. See, the paper smelled faintly of salt and smoke. Daniel read it a dozen times, his chest tightening. Clara, alive, still haunted, still bound. And the words, time runs differently here. He knew then that his story wasn't finished. The road to Hallowik felt even longer the second time. The bus driver was new, younger, and when Daniel asked about the village, he shrugged. Never heard of it. But the landscape was the same. The winding roads, the thick pine forests, the distant taste of sea air, and at last, the same gravel turnabout. End of the line, the driver said, just as before. Daniel stepped off, clutching his leather notebook. His hair was grayer now, his face lined with years, but his resolve was steady. He walked the narrow lane bordered by hedges, and when the village came into view, his breath caught. Hallowik was unchanged. The cottages gleamed white, the flower boxes burst with color, laughter rang through the square. Not a shingle broken, not a wall cracked. It was as though time itself had not touched it. But more than that, he recognized faces. The boy chasing a dog down the lane, the bread seller with bright eyes and smooth skin. The very same people, not a day older. Daniel's chest tightened. 10 years had passed for him, but for them, none. He walked into the square. Villagers greeted him with warm smiles, as if he were a traveler who had been gone only a season. "Welcome back," the bread seller said. Her voice was as cheerful as the day he'd first met her. Daniel's throat went dry. "Do you remember me?" She tilted her head, smile never faltering. "Of course. Hallowik remembers everyone who belongs." The words chilled him. He turned sharply and hurried toward the inn. Jonas stood at the door, broad-shouldered as ever, his hair still black, his face untouched by time. "Daniel Cole," Jonas said, as though greeting an old friend. "We wondered when you would return." Daniel's voice shook. "Where's Clara?" Jonas's smile faded into something heavier. "She came back, yes, she belongs here, as do you. In time, you will understand." Daniel clenched his fists. "No, I'm not staying. I just need to see her." Jonas's gaze softened almost pityingly. "Then go to the cliffs. But remember, Hallowik keeps what it claims." The path to the cliffs was just as he remembered. Wind whipping, gulls crying, sea crashing below. But now, near the edge, a small figure waited. Clara. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face lined, her shoulders stooped. She looked older than him, impossibly so, as though years had raced upon her at once. Daniel's breath caught. "Clara," she turned, her eyes heavy but kind. "You came back. I wasn't sure you would." "What happened to you?" he whispered. She gave a weary smile. "I left Hallowik. I lived, Daniel, truly lived. But the farther I got, the faster time caught me. Every year away felt like 10. The village, it doesn't just trap people, it traps youth itself. Outside of it, we pay back the years we were spared." Daniel staggered. "That's why Elias..." Her eyes lowered. "He didn't make it. He tried to fight both worlds, and neither forgave him." Silence hung between them, broken only by the waves. Clara reached for his hand, her skin fragile, trembling. "I wrote to you because I didn't want to be forgotten. The world needs to know, even if it won't believe." Daniel swallowed hard. "Then let's leave, together. We can tell them." She shook her head slowly. "It's too late for me. My time's nearly spent. But you, Hallowik still wants you. It always did. That's why you were allowed to leave once, so you would come back." Daniel's chest constricted. "No, I won't let them take me. I'll fight." Clara's eyes shimmered with sorrow. "Fight then, but understand, every story here ends the same." The chant began before he saw them. Into the light. Into the light. Villagers emerged from the path, candles raised, faces serene. Jonas led them, steps steady, eyes glowing with certainty. Clara squeezed Daniel's hand one last time. "Run, Daniel, or stay. Either way, remember." Then she stepped toward the villagers, her body folding into the glow. Her features softened, blurred, dissolved into silver radiance. In moments, she was gone. Daniel cried out, reaching for her, but the light seared his eyes. The villagers stood unwavering, their voices rising like a tide. Into the light, into the light. The glow spread, curling toward him, beckoning. Daniel stumbled back, notebook clutched to his chest, his pen scratched desperately, even as the radiance enveloped him. Hallowik is timeless, but time always demands its price. The last thing he heard was the crash of waves and the unbroken chant. Then, silence. Days later, a fisherman on the mainland found a bottle washed ashore. Inside was a sodden page of a notebook, the ink smeared but still legible. Beware, Helowick. The village without old people is real. The fisherman frowned, tucked the paper away, and said nothing. And across the sea, Helowick waited, eternal. And so the story comes to a close. Yet its echoes may linger quietly in your mind. Helowick, the village without old people, was it real? Or was it simply a warning that no one can escape the passage of time? Every story is like a lantern, casting light upon the hidden corners of memory and emotion. If this journey has meant something to you, don't forget to follow Legend Lantern, so that we may meet again on another night of storytelling. Wishing you peace and the sweetest of dreams.